Hi there, and welcome to the show. I'm Mom.
And I am Tom, and this is episode 3 of the Mom and Tom podcast. So today is going to be part 2 of our look into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just last time, or I guess that was a few weeks ago now because we missed 1 week in there, we looked at the first 5 movies that were released in order, because we're going in chronological order of when they were released. We looked at the first 5. These movies were Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America. And we also gave you our ratings, and so we're going to continue to do that. We're doing ratings out of 10, just to be clear. And before we get started, I just want to mention a quick email that we got from one of our listeners. They wrote in about their personal ranking of the first 5 movies that we went over. Their ranking was Thor number 1, Captain America number 2, Iron Man number 3, and then it says in parentheses, these next 2 were terrible movies, Iron Man 2 and The Incredible Hulk at the bottom. And even though maybe I don't think they were as bad as this listener, I think that I agree with the general ranking. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say. Actually, I think I liked Captain America better than Thor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right, so just one switch, though.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it seems like the consensus.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So we're going to jump right into it. The next movie on our list, what is it, Mom?
It is The Avengers. Came out in 2012. And
yes.
This one was the first one directed by Joss Whedon.
Oh,
and,
good point.
Yes, and it grossed $623.36 million. So
Wow.
it ranked pretty high up there. In fact, I think the only one that beats it.
I know Black Panther beats it.
Yeah, Black Panther, I think, is
that sounds right.
Beats it,
I mean,
yeah.
I remember just because since it was the first Avengers, it was the first time seeing all of these superheroes come together into one movie, and it was just so much star power.
Oh, definitely.
All combined into one movie, and it made for a really exciting release. Like, it felt like one of those movies that even if they didn't make it great, it would have done good just because there were so many names in it.
I think people are just so curious.
Right.
Actually, the other one that did beat it is Avengers Infinity War. So
that makes sense.
Beat it by a little bit, but yes, Black Panther, definitely, because that was the number one.
That was the number one. Yep, I believe we went over that last time, but yes.
For sure.
And Avengers was also obviously, since it's ranked 3rd, it was the highest grossing film up to that time that Marvel had.
Right.
So it was definitely seemed like worth the investment for them.
Yes.
To get all those actors into the movie. So in case anybody doesn't remember, the general plot of that movie was that Loki had this staff, and he had this was actually also the first time we got to see an Infinity Stone, which would eventually lead to Infinity War, obviously.
Yes.
There was an Infinity Stone that was inside his staff, and it allowed him to sort of convert people's will, to make them follow him and do what he ordered.
Yes.
So he was able to. I remember he used it on Hawkeye.
Yes.
In that movie, and Hawkeye would during the sort of end fight scene, they had to fight against Hawkeye. And that was kind of fun to see.
Yeah.
That interaction.
And also he enslaves Dr. Eric Selvig's character, the scientist.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Played by Stellan Skarsgård.
Yes,
that was
the
one
name
thing
that we could not come up with last time. The scientist from Thor. All right. Yes, I do remember that one as well. And that movie also has one of the funniest scenes I think ever in a Marvel movie, when Hulk is fighting Loki,
Yeah.
and he grabs him and he just whips him back and forth. And,
Like bam, bam,
yeah,
bam, bam.
He calls him a puny god.
Yeah, puny god. Because Loki looks at him and says, "I am a god." And
Yeah.
so Hulk just picks him up and slaps him around, and then tells him, "Puny god."
Yes, I love that scene.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, seeing all those characters come together was amazing, and even though when I said about, even if the movie wasn't great, it still would have done good. I think that they did do great with this movie.
Yeah.
And
I do too.
and so I think that even helps it even more.
Mm-hmm.
I think that personally, I would probably give the first Avengers like a 8.5.
Yeah. I would
That's what I'm
totally
gonna say.
agree with that. Yeah. I liked it. And I liked the introduction of some of the other characters, Jeremy Renner's character, like you were talking about.
Yep,
Hawkeye. He gets introduced and they do a good job of that. And just a little bit more on Black Widow.
Black Widow,
you
yep.
see her a little bit more. And of course the main, the main guy is Iron Man and Captain America and the Hulk and
Right.
all of that. So.
Oh, and I just realized too that this must have been Mark Ruffalo's first.
Yeah,
Hulk.
I was just thinking that too when I said the Hulk.
Yeah,
that's
because
the first
the original
time he's reintroduced after
Right, the original
the
Incredible
movie.
Hulk
Yeah,
that didn't do so hot
yeah,
was not Mark Ruffalo.
correct.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the first one with Mark
It
Ruffalo.
seemed like this iteration of Hulk worked better for them.
Yeah, I think that Mark Ruffalo, or the way it was written or whatever, but interjected more humanity to Hulk, to Bruce Banner.
I agree
that
because
kind
of the
thing.
fact that it's just like what makes Hulk an interesting character in the first place is how the contrast between when he's the Hulk, when he's kind of this insane super strong being,
Invincible, pretty
right?
much,
And
yeah.
then when he's Bruce Banner, he's kind of like this really smart, sort of quiet, doesn't really want to be part of the fight kind of guy.
Well, and he's actually trying to help people because when Black Widow goes to get him, he's living in some remote area
Right.
and he's trying to help the indigenous people and that kind of thing. So he's very humanitarian and that type of
Yeah.
thing. So
He's
yeah.
a very, very nice guy.
Yeah. And I think that deals with his conflict of he knows what happens when the Hulk is released. He knows a lot of destruction and damage happens. And so when he's Bruce Banner, it's like he's wanting to atone for that or make up for that or, do as much good as he can
Right.
while he's Bruce Banner and trying to keep the Hulk under control.
Right, because that is an important part of knowing about how the Hulk works is that I at least at this time he's not really able to control the Hulk in it much at all. Like he has very little. Bruce Banner, I should say, has very little influence over what the Hulk chooses to destroy and not destroy. So and that becomes a problem in many situations where he'll just start destroying things regardless of whether it's on his side or on the enemy side, because the Hulk is just like that. He's just nuts. So.
Yeah. There's also kind of a fun, I like the expansion of Agent Coulson's character.
Oh, right.
In this, you just see more of what he's made of or what he's about. He really does try to protect the Avengers, and he starts out as such a quiet character in Iron Man and stuff. He just seems very peripheral. But
Right.
In this movie, he becomes, because he sadly gets killed in this movie by Loki. But
Yeah. Well, we should say "quote unquote" killed,
well,
because what's funny about
but in this movie, you don't know that he's going to come back.
right.
but yeah.
Well, what's funny is just the following year. A fun fact about Agent Coulson in particular is the following year after Avengers comes out is when they started up the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. And that one actually starred Agent Coulson
Yes.
for a large part of it. So
Yes.
that is when you find out it's like, wait, he didn't actually die. And yeah.
Yeah, somehow they bring him back. I don't remember all the
Yeah.
details on that. But
I believe I remember watching, some of the first season. I didn't really get too invested in that show in particular. So I apologize for not knowing how they got his character back, but I do remember that actor being a big part of that show. So
Yeah. Yeah. And this gets, the fight scenes in this one get pretty elaborate when the Tesseract opens up the wormhole, allowing Loki to get to Earth, but also those
giant alien
they look like
army.
metal worms or something
Yeah.
like that. And they're pretty nasty. And then the Avengers, have to really unite and fight together. And by this time, Natasha has fought with Hawkeye
And got him back.
And got him. She knocks him unconscious, which breaks the control that Loki has over him. So that brings him in, and it really unites them because if you remember right, they were kind of fighting about the best way to handle Loki and the Tesseract
Right.
and all of that, because the Tesseract is actually emitting some kind of energy that makes them angry or something, or is divisive or evil or whatever.
Right, because I remember Thor kind of just wanting to be like, oh, guys, like, don't interfere in this. This is just me and my brother.
Right.
Like, I'll handle it. I'll just take him back to Asgard and it's fine. And they're kind of like, well, no, this is actually a pretty big deal. Like,
and Bruce and Stark are like very scientific about it, and they're figuring out that something's going on here. Why, what is Fury doing, and all those kinds of things. Why are they all together, and why, kind of what's going on.
Yeah.
And of course, Steve Rogers, Captain America, he's just initially thinking, oh, it's all, I'm a soldier and you just serve.
Always the goody.
Yeah, but he starts to figure out that something is up,
Something is
but
up.
again, it's how do we approach this kind of thing? But again, just does unite them to fight together when those creatures come through the wormhole.
Right. So, I mean, as you can tell that we spent a lot of time on this first one, that we do like this one quite a bit. And it was a very memorable movie, I would say. Like, even though we had do some amount of research before we start this, I feel like Avengers was like the first movie in this list that I almost didn't have to look up anything about. It was I feel like it was very memorable. But speaking of that, the next movie on our list is Iron Man 3.
Yes, released in 2013.
Yes.
1 year later, and grossed $409 million. So kind of more in the mid-range for a Marvel Universe movie.
Right. Which I have to say, I think that makes sense for this movie. Because I think I'd consider it kind of a mid-range movie.
Yeah, I would agree.
I felt like it didn't. And again, this is just our opinion, so feel free to let us know what you guys think. Anyone listening, what you guys think about any of these movies. But to me, I think that it doesn't quite match up to the first Iron Man, but I think it sort of redeemed the Iron Man series a little bit because of the fact that Iron Man 2 was like not great, and we talked about that last time. But
yeah,
I thought that at least this one kind of brought Iron Man back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, again, showing a little bit more humanity for Iron Man, because he is feeling very conflicted and very concerned about what they went through in Avengers, with the
Right.
alien invasion and the battle that basically destroyed New
Destroyed
York.
New
and-
York, yeah.
Yeah, and he just feels very, concerned about that, and his relationship with Pepper is, becoming real, a
Yeah,
real
more
relationship.
serious, right?
Yeah. And he builds at least, it says actually here, dozens of Iron Man suits.
Yeah, I remember he builds a whole bunch
Yeah.
more, and that sort of ends up becoming a conflict between him and
Mm-hmm,
Pepper because
Yeah.
he's kind of, I mean, yeah, like you were saying, since he's so kind of going a little crazy about what happened in Avengers,
Mm-hmm.
he feels like, okay, I need to build a ton more stuff because if something like this happens again,
Yeah.
he
wants
we need to be ready.
prepared.
And-
Yeah, and he adds more features, if you will, where he can press a button and the suit comes
Yeah.
and finds him, and
Yeah, a
all
lot of
that.
actually really
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
features.
It's very cool effects. Very
Yeah.
cool effects. Yeah. Yeah, and the it's kind of interesting though. The the bad guy is the Mandarin, and the interesting thing about it is that you think it's the this little guy,
The British,
yeah, played by Ben Kingsley,
Yeah.
and that starts to like not make sense because the guy who is the actual Mandarin initially presented himself that he was disabled.
right?
So Stark would never think that that's
Wouldn't
who it
think
is.
that it would be him, right?
Yeah.
But then as the movie goes on, they figure out that
Yeah.
he's wanting to, he had, is wanting to use that experimental drug, Extremis, I believe it's called, and he wants to basically use it to, like, he experiments it on Pepper, right?
Yes, he does. And it kind of makes them sort of a super being, and they kind of heat up, and
Yeah, it's a really strange,
it's really
like,
really strange
Yeah.
effect.
very strange.
Yeah,
I-
and again, another human side of Tony Stark is that he ends up teaming up with this little 10-year-old boy.
Yes.
Yeah, who finds him in his barn or whatever, like an outbuilding
Right.
or a work shed, that kind of thing. And
Helps him track down the Mandarin guy and stuff. Yeah, it's cool. So overall, I think that for rating wise, I think I'd give Iron Man 3 a 6.5.
okay, I was
That's what I
going to
wanna
say
go
like a right around a 7
Right
to
around
7.5. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I maybe being a woman, I don't know, if I just like the added humanity to Tony Stark's character, there's the further development
Right.
of that, kind of continuing to kind of take down the playboy, spoiled kid,
Imagery, yeah, the heat surrounds
image.
him.
Yeah. He's truly, you see that he truly loves Pepper, and he rescues her and all that.
Right.
I don't know. And then with the
And-
young boy and everything.
And at the very end, I remember he vows to never be Iron Man again or whatever, something cheesy like that, because he's showing his like dedication to
Yeah.
Pepper, and I believe he destroys
Yep.
the suits.
He orders Jarvis to destroy the Iron Man suit as a sign of his devotion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
nice.
Yeah. So,
I mean, on a side note, that it is a very, I think what makes Marvel movies so interesting and like what makes them so good at making these superhero movies is partially due to their ability to take these super beings or like these, or I guess like in Stark's case, just like really smart people and then take those characters and be able to show like the human side of them and how even though they're these incredible beings with these powers and stuff, that they still struggle with regular human things and human
Yes.
emotions and
Yes.
that type of stuff.
Yes.
And I really think that being able to look at that makes it so that you can relate to the characters so much better, and
Yeah.
makes it a lot more compelling to me.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
All right.
So that pretty much wraps up Iron Man 3. The next one is admittedly another one that I do not remember very well. I apologize for, but it is Thor: The Dark World. This is the second Thor movie.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I remember, this is the one with the evil elves, the dark elves or whatever they are.
Yes.
And Natalie Portman's character.
Yep, Dr. Foster, Dr. Jane Foster.
She gets infected.
Yes, with
The Aether.
Yes, the Aether. Yeah. Yeah, this one I found a little weird. It was just a little,
A little strange.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to say too science fiction-y. I'm not sure how I want to describe it, but yeah, it was just a little bit weird, and this weapon, the Aether, starts affecting the 9 realms, and it opens portals
To
and weird
all these
to the
random-
different
the
realms, and
yeah.
so people are switching around different settings, and I don't know.
It definitely felt like to me that this one might and I haven't read too in depth into the reviews for this one, but it feels to me like this one might have been one that if you were like a comic book fan of Thor, that you might have liked more than the regular viewer, because like you were saying, there's just so many elements of all these, like, the history of the realms was really big in this one, and like all the different portals to go to the different places. So what I would guess, at least, is that someone who has read the comics and has read about all these, knows about all the different realms and all this backstory, that seeing
like
all
your
the
dad.
yeah, like that. So that, like, seeing all the characters go between all these settings probably would have been really cool.
Right.
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 It as a casual viewer is what I would call ourselves.
Yes.
Is that it was a little bit like, oh wow, this is a little all over the place and kind of crazy.
I mean, it's not that it wasn't good.
No.
And
I mean, and as always, the effects are super cool, and like, and I think Thor as a character is still really neat. I still really like Asgard, and the characters in Asgard, like his father Odin and Heimdall, who's like the keeper of the giant portals or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really still like a lot of the characters in Thor. I just thought this one, to me, wasn't as good as the first. That's what I'll say.
That's what I would say. I would probably give this right around like a 5 or so for me, maybe 5 or 6. I mean, like I say, they're all good in their own way. This just was, because I had not read the comics and stuff, just was a little bit more involved for me.
I agree. I'm gonna also go with 6. I like that one.
Okay, but it ties together some things too with the Tesseract and the Infinity Stones and things like that, because
it does give some extra information that will come in handy later for sure.
Yeah.
That I agree.
Yeah.
So I think the last one we're gonna do for today is Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Yeah. This one again released in 2014, and grossed just under 260 million. So again, a little more than Dark World, but
Oh, did we say how much Dark World grossed? Sorry, did we do that?
I'm sorry. Dark World was 206 million.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, again, a little. I would say Winter Soldier was a little below.
The first one.
Yeah. Well, a little on the low end for the Marvel universe.
Right.
The 260.
Oh, the gross. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That makes
the
sense.
gross is a little bit low.
I have to say though, for any of the second movies that we've gone over so far, like between Iron Man 2 and the second Thor, that I think
Right.
Winter Soldier is the best one.
Yes,
In my
agree.
opinion,
I
of,
would
like,
totally
the-
agree. Yeah.
The sequels, that's what I mean.
Yeah, and I liked I liked the explanation of for Steve Rogers finding out what happened to Bucky. You know, he thought Bucky was dead,
Right.
of course, and not that the way he comes back is
Is great.
ideal.
You're right.
vastly less than ideal, but at least I think for Steve Rogers, being, you know, Mr. Super Positive, that I think he feels like, well, at least he's alive,
Right.
and maybe I have a chance of getting him back as a friend.
And that
even though
ends up
he's-
being
yeah.
a big part of the movie, is even though they're kind of chasing Bucky down, and because Bucky Barnes is the Winter Soldier
Yes.
in this,
Yes.
and he's the bad guy. So even
Yes.
though Steve Rogers is kind of chasing him down and fighting him every step
Mm-hmm.
of the way, he never wants to, you know, go full out, because he's like you
Yeah.
were saying, he still has hope that he's like, maybe if we just like capture him and we can
Yeah.
figure out what's going on, then he'll, you know, turn back to our side. And
Well, and like how Steve Rogers became a super soldier because of what he was injected with, but he was also intended to be good, if you will.
Right.
Whereas with the Winter Soldier, he also was, I believe,
Injected. Yep.
But this was to change his person. I mean, literally just to make him a mindless assassin.
Right.
Is really what the goal of. So it's like many things in life. There's the good and the bad. You know, the where evil takes and twists something good, and
Yeah,
it
for
bad.
sure. And also in this movie, he works very closely with Scarlett Johansson's character,
Mm-hmm.
Black Widow. So we get to see even more of her.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know some people have very strong opinions about Scarlett Johansson as an actress, but I think that her character, Black Widow, is really fun to watch. And it's like,
Yeah.
she's really smart, has, you know, fights like with all the acrobatics and all that is
Yes.
fun to watch to me. And it's interesting to see her interact with all these like super beings when she's kind of just a normal person herself.
Yeah.
Really. And
Yeah, she
yeah.
is. But she's been, again, you know, brought up to be
an assassin.
an assassin, groomed, and, you know, you find out eventually what all the tragic things that have happened to her that have
Right.
really
Yeah,
affected
her backstory is actually pretty sad. But I believe that they don't go into that too much until Ultron. Age
Yes.
of Ultron. I believe that's the one where
Yeah.
they go into.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't really know quite yet, but
Yeah.
And I know this is just a slight sidetrack, but I know there's a lot of people that were asking for a Black Widow movie during this time. Like, what would you have thought of that? Do you think that you like her more as a sort of side character, or do you think she could have had her own movie?
Oh, that's a really good question. My first instinct is to say that I prefer her as a side character, because sometimes when you try to make a movie of more of a side character, it just kind of doesn't live up to the bigger movies. I mean, I think they could have done one and it would have been okay. I just doubt it would have been great.
Yeah.
But again, not having been a reader of the comics, I don't know enough about her backstory
right.
and things. I mean, like you say, it does get revealed in Age of Ultron, but
But it's sort of summarized. They don't go super in depth.
right,
Whereas
right,
maybe if it, maybe people who do know more in depth of what her background is, maybe they could have made a movie out of that.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
but I think at this time, I remember really being excited when people talked about a Black Widow movie. Like, wow, that would be so cool to see, her backstory and stuff. But I think that in retrospect, I feel like I liked her character in every movie she was in. And so now I'm sort of glad that they didn't do a standalone, because I feel like if they would have made a standalone and it did, like you said, if it didn't live up to what her character was like in the other movies,
Yeah.
then I think it would have tainted my view of her a little bit.
Yeah.
Being like, oh, that wasn't great.
Yeah.
And like, you know.
Yeah.
But being able to kind of see her a little bit in all these different movies, I think they did it right. In retrospect, I think they did it right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too.
So do you want to give a rating for Winter Soldier?
Again, I'd probably say between a 6 and a 7, probably closer to 7 though. I liked it.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
I'm going to go as high as 7.5, I think.
Yeah, because I think I like this one better than the Iron Man 3.
I agree.
I
agree.
So.
I think of this set of these set that we just talked about, I think Winter Soldier is my favorite of them. Or actually, I should say Avengers was first.
I was gonna say, wait
sorry.
a minute.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking between Winter Soldier, Dark World, and Iron Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
Winter Soldier is my favorite, so 7.5 is what I'm gonna go with.
Yeah, yeah, and I think this too also talks a little bit more about Hydra, and I don't know, you just
get to know more about the bad guys as well too.
Yeah, and I really do think Chris Evans does such a good job as Captain America. I think it was an excellent casting choice, which we've talked about casting choices, as well.
Right.
And I really think that he does a good job.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think the next movie on the list is going to be the one that I talk the most about casting lists. But unfortunately, we are at our normal time cutoff, so we are going to save that next movie that I'm not going to mention for the next part. I just want to mention that we have a email. I know I normally mention this at the beginning, but our email is momandtompodcast@gmail.com. That's all one word, no spaces. If you guys would like to give us feedback on the movies that we just went over today, that would be awesome. We love hearing from anybody who's listening out there, and this is also going to be on YouTube, so if you want to leave a comment on there, we'll also read those, and we would love to go over them for our next episode.
Yeah, because we are definitely not touting ourselves as experts on these movies. We're just we're just chatting here and talking.
Like I said, we're casual viewers. That's how I describe us. So again, those movies were the first Avengers, Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, and Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
All right.
So yeah, that's going to do it for episode 3 of the Mom and Tom podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope that you come back in another 2 weeks to listen to our next episode.
Please do. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.